All right, recording in progress. It is happening. Hey, thank you, Victor. Um, and is it Vicard?
Yeah, that would be the French way of saying it. And if you're British, it'll be Vicart.
Vicard, of
That's
course,
how they do
Victor
it here.
Vicard. Dude, it's a you got a superhero name, man.
Yeah, my parents chose it well.
You lucked out. I love it. Well, hey, I gotta tell you, the very first thing is the first time that I heard Dune. I almost lost my face for you. I was in Minneapolis. I was doing a show at the Guthrie Theater, and we lived 2 blocks away from the theater. Where we were staying, and I had to walk. And it's the middle of winter in Minneapolis, and it was maybe 12 degrees, which is like 11, -11 in Celsius.
Yeah, yeah.
And they said, "Don't walk," and I was like, "Whatever." So I walked, and somebody, Stone Meadow of Doom on YouTube had posted "Thirst," and I was like, "Cool." I listened to it, and I got to the 4 point mark when I got to the stage door. So I could have gone in, but I would have had to take my headphones off and do all that. But the 4 minute mark of Thirst is right where it changes into that slow tempo. And
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, oh, I know they're building back up to something. I can't just go in. So I walked around the theater for another 4 minutes, and my face was so frozen by the end of the day. They told us not to. I had to put Vaseline on it for like a week, but I was like, it. I'm not kidding. I mean, it's not hyperbole to say like that. Hearing that song really changed something in my brain and changed something in my life. Like, I, I, I it felt like a whole nother level. It was just absolutely uh, a really sort of one in a lifetime experience. It was
Wow.
amazing.
Oh. It was my favorite song on that album for a while, Thirst, and it definitely was our favorite to play live.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
exactly for that moment you are talking about when it just comes down and then it's just this really simple chord riffs. I
Yep.
think I think it's really cool. Dan, the other guitarist, he's got this. We used to call it the Elder riff because of the band Elder, just because of the
Oh
up up.
yeah.
It's got this little gap that comes in that reminds me of Dead Root Steering from Elder.
That's my favorite Elder song.
It's one of their best album, yeah. I think so. I think so too. It's really good.
I
But
saw
yeah,
them play.
yeah.
Sorry, I saw them play at St. Vitus before St. Vitus closed in Brooklyn, and that riff is just like just watching him play it live. Watching Nick play it live is amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good one. We've played a couple of times with them. Well, a few times now with festivals and stuff, but a couple of times at in one time in Edinburgh
Oh
for
yeah,
for the launch of this album of Asheron. We were opening for them, and then we did another one in your country. We did that in Brick by Brick at San Diego. We played a show with them there,
oh
and
cool.
yeah,
Oh
that
yeah,
was cool.
yeah. I love Elder.
Good band.
They're a really great band. Are they still on tour with Tool right now?
No, that was last. Yeah, that was last
Last
year.
year.
They did a big one with them last year.
That's cool.
But amazing. Yeah, it's cool to see them going places.
Yeah, it is. It really is. They're and I met Nick there. He's a good dude, and that was just it was cool. It was right before he put out the next album, and I said, "Hey, I love the new stuff." And he was like, "Well, not everybody does." And I was like, "Well, yeah, you know what though, man? You're an artist. It's not a product. You're not making a sandwich, that everybody knows exactly what they're getting. You're making something different." And it's just cool to see how many different colors and the spectrum that they went off into, which was really cool. They went to Germany and sort of had that time, and they did the split with Cadavar, which was just so cool. That
It's a
album,
collab, yeah. I
yeah,
think it was more of a collab. It
yeah,
wasn't.
collaboration, yeah,
Yeah, it didn't drag me as much as their own stuff.
yeah,
Because maybe I'm not as much of a fan as of Cadaver. I prefer the way these guys play. But yeah, I think they're cool. I quite like the
me
fact that
too.
they put keyboards and synths now. So they've got like this guy who does keys and guitar. I
Yeah,
think that was a good move for sure.
yeah.
And they recorded. It's funny. They recorded an album in my hometown in France.
Oh, really?
Uh, like in a tiny city called Angers, and they went to and
Uh-huh.
recorded a really amazing studio there with I think two American guys. I think it's
Huh,
called Black Box, some shit like that.
huh.
And they were like, I was like, oh, they're recording somewhere, and then I was like, I can't know this area. And then they got the city on the Instagram. It's like it's my hometown. I was like, it's
Cologne,
tiny,
that's cool.
tiny fucking place in France. But I think that was their last album or the one just before that, which I thought was funny.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, no,
Cool.
I think Cadavar kind of lost it a little somewhere along the way. I like their earlier stuff, but then I felt like those two coming together, something about it, the chemistry of it worked. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Elder's been great for a long time.
Yeah.
I loved them since I got onto them in the Lore album. But wait, let me talk to you about Dune. Um, so you are Victor Vicart, you are high-end sort of vocals, you and Dan Bartlett, who sort of does the low end. Do you and Dan mostly write the songs together?
No, not really. So Dan is involved on, it depends on the album. On Asher and Dan was more involved in the writing of
Hmm.
like even guitars and stuff like that. But also at the time, it was Dudley and I were writing most of the Dudley is our
Drummer.
drummer,
Yeah.
and I were writing most of the structures of the songs. So we'd be writing a bit at home, jamming a lot, and then we go through tons and tons of processes where
Yeah.
people can listen to it, and then we can just kind of go engage if the structure works and not. And we've done the same on all albums. Dan was not, we didn't write with him on Etemen for structures, but we did that with Jack, our previous bassist,
Right.
who also wrote some guitars. And then on this album, Voidkind, we did it with Alan. Alan was our best
Alan
on
Patterson.
Ashford. Yeah, that's it. He left for that and then came back and then he left again. But we were like good friends. But he wrote the last album with us, and he was a lot more involved on this one too. So I would say the structures and like the main kind of music of it, because the vocals and like the leads, the vocals and the synths, we tend to write them once the album is recorded. So we record the structures and then we work on that. If that makes sense.
Yep,
Uh,
absolutely.
but Alan, on the last album, I think Dudley, Alan, and I were pretty much, around the same contribution. It's hard to put numbers on them. It's just we're in the room, we're trying stuff. Some people sometimes write stuff at home. Some stuff happen on the spot.
Yeah.
But it's a bit like Tool. I watched an interview of the guy from Tool, the drummer. I think it's kind of that
Yeah.
that kind of writing. It's just some people have some ideas, you bring them on the table, you jam them until they become something um, you know, interesting. Let's put
Yeah,
it.
no, it's always one of my questions for people is like, what is the creative process? Because I'm not a musician, so it fascinates me. Do you start with a riff? Do you start with a, but I it sounds like you guys take a lot of time to really think about structure, and it makes sense because of the way how sort of how well structured, but how kind of delicate in a way the music is, that like it feels like you guys have spent a lot of time thinking about how this is going to go. And I read an interview with you about how in Voidkind you were you were kind of thinking after Edinburough about the live show, the live experience, about playing music, and you sort of said, well, what's missing? But like playing something that's instantly recognizable, that has like people know from the riff what's going to start off. So I think it's do you think that you sort of tailored Voidkind more to be like something that you can enjoy more playing live?
Yeah, and I think, well, the thing is the difference between Voidkind and Etemen. Etemen is a bit more slow build
Yep.
than Voidkind. And although the songs are still long and stuff like that, we've got shorter stuff, but we wanted something that just felt, things that would go straight at you rather than
Yep.
slow build. And we have still slow build. We've got Eleonora and stuff like that, which are like a bit more classic Dune songs, but we wanted stuff
Yeah.
that were like, right. And also because we didn't want the stuff to sound the same, so we just
Yeah.
trying to make sure we had um, variety between those two albums. But yeah, the approach was that something that was maybe a bit more straight up, fast, hard hitting, I guess, or like maybe a touch more accessible from the get go.
Yeah.
Uh, and then on a few tracks, and then other tracks, we can just go banana, and do whatever we want, which is the case for, Cobblestone, the last song of the album. I think is more like, a lot more expansive. It's my
Yes.
favorite song on the record, but I think it's the one where it's just a bit like, I don't know what happened there. It was just kind of different songs that have been put together, and at first we're like, well, it's probably not going to work, and then it ended up working great. So it's just one of those.
It,
But yeah,
that
I
that's
think, yeah, the key word for us is kind of variations, and and being able to not to feel like familiar, yes, but not to feel like this is kind of the same song here, or
Right.
are we not already in the past, that kind of vibe.
I don't know if you listened to the thing that I sent that the little clip from the podcast, but for me, the way I talked about it was like it felt like with Asheron and Progenitor to a lesser extent, like you guys were really figuring out the long, slow build into the payoff, the tension and release. Like I feel like on Edom and Anka, like in a way, it's like you perfected binary, and then Voidkind shows up, and all of a sudden there are like irrational numbers. Reliquary, the first time I heard it, I was like, I'm not sure where do I throw the horns? Where do I bang the head? And then the more and more I've listened to it, the more I've found that it surprises me almost every time that I listen to it. There's a lot of stuff that I feel like is really subtle and surprising in it you've moved sort of you built on that built slow build up payoff dynamic, I think, in a really interesting way that is not that kind of subverts expectation a little bit. You expect I'm going to hear Edmund Anka too, and it's like, no, this is something entirely different, and it has all these other refracted angles and mirrors and layers that I haven't heard yet from a Dune album. So I'm really excited about it. I just think it's cool to see where you guys are going and where you can go now.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's funny that you mentioned Reliquary because we for like a while we were even thinking about that's going to be the first single. Like our label was keen on that. Um, we weren't, and what is very funny is because we played it once live before the release of the album, and we were a
Mhm.
bit like, it's weird. Like the reaction of people is not the one we were expecting. I guess
Hmm.
it's because the time thing. We start on a seven. The whole song is like written on a seven, which is not a. You cannot really headbang to it. I think we just could tell people were a bit confused about the song, and we've kept playing it on tour for the whole Voidkind tour, and I think halfway through the tour we're like, I don't think it comes across as well live as we expected, like versus something like Abode of the Perfect Soul or
Right.
or Cobalt and stuff. Some other songs where you just get like the you can see the reaction and you can see the vibe of the crowd. You just get them straight up.
Yeah.
But
Abode of the Perfect Soul is instantly recognizable because,
yeah,
the minute you start screaming procession, we know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we get that at shows now. People start when people ask for it, so they just scream procession. They're like procession. Okay,
It's
cool.
awesome. Well, that was me. You heard me. I was all the way over in the States, but I'm loud. It seems like Edom and Anka, uh, so so that so Progenitor was 2013, and then after that you did Aurora Majesty, which was 2014,
Yeah.
and you have a song on there of Blade and Carapace that you remade on a single for Omega Severer. That I was that like was that just purely a production decision?
No, it was like basically we had the Itemen ready to go. It was in the back pocket, but COVID happened,
Yeah.
and because of that, we were just like, oh, let's do something.
Oh,
And
cool.
out of all the stuff we were doing at the time, live, we were still playing Off Blade a lot, and everyone was like, this song is cool, and we love it. And for me, it was the first song I was really proud of with Dune. It was like, with all the EPs, we don't play anything from the EPs except the stuff from Aura Majesty.
Hmm.
I think Blade is such a fun song. Like sometimes our basses just end up in the crowd surfing. You got, Axel Pete starting, and then you
Totally.
just switch things with like a proper full-on prog moment, and yeah, it's a cool song. It's a really cool song for that.
You guys have you actually there's another one that I loved always off of Ashrin, which is Protostar, that is so proggy and
Oh,
goes in
hey.
so many different ways and is just like, do you ever play that live?
No, not really. I'm not a big fan of it.
Oh, good. I
I think
mentioned
like,
you. I mentioned your least favorite song. I'm so glad.
no, no, no. It's. I mean, it's a good song. It's just yeah. I'm not. I just feel like we're like leaps above now.
Oh yeah.
Like what we were doing. So I just feel like you would remove like 8 minute songs for this one, and I'll be like, nah, no, it's not happening. It has to feel like. it brings something else on the table. And I think the song I was talking to you about 2 seconds ago of Blade, it does that.
Hmm.
This one just feels like a lesser version of us, so I don't think we're gonna bring them back.
It definitely feels like a younger version of you guys. You know
Well,
what I mean?
we were 23, so it's like
Yeah.
I was 23 every time. So it's yeah, of course we were a lot younger. I think it's one of the first songs we've written with Dudley when we started the band. So
Okay.
it's really one of the first stuff.
Yeah, and Red Giant off of that album. I love Red Giant. Asheron, like I said. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I like that song. I like the ending of it.
I do too. I
Yeah,
do too.
it's like, do you know the band Coil Gun?
Mm-mm.
It's a really good band. They've got a song called Earthian, and we kind of stole the idea of the last riff from that.
Oh,
So give it a listen. It's a really, really good song. Earthian, and the band is called Coil Gun.
Corgan. Okay, cool. Um, so Asheron, it was your first like proper LP, 2017, and it has kind of an environmental. I mean, obviously the band. Do you know that your do you know that on your the Encyclopedia Medlem page there's a disclaimer above the name of above the information for the band that says not to be confused with the New Wabam band Dune who released a demo tape in 1979. I mean, you must get that all the time. People must be like, "Wait, are you guys the one that released that one demo tape in 1979 or are you the other?"
Never, never heard that until now, but yes, unbelievable. I didn't even check that.
Yeah, I don't know why. I like it doesn't seem pertinent to put that information up there. It seems like no one's going to confuse the band from 1979 that was a Wabam band that released a demo tape with Dune. It doesn't
I,
seem like
I,
that's gonna.
I guess these guys are quite diligent, so you don't want that's not such a bad thing.
You're safe. You're safe. I hope it doesn't come back. You know, I hope they don't get a have a huge comeback. Um, so yeah, so Asheron in 2017, and it has a sort of environmental kind of feel to it, like an environmentalist. It feels a little bit, like it has sort of elements of like Spice, like Frank Herbert's, book. And the thing I realized the other day as I was looking at this stuff is that, like, in a way, you've kind of paralleled destruction of the planet, planetary destruction, with the fall of man. Is that am I right about that? It seems like that's sort of what's
Yeah,
happening.
yeah. I guess the whole inspiration on that when we were singing about the concept and the lyrics was we wanted to do like a Nosy Cavalry of the Wind inspired story, which is the movie, the anime by the Studio Ghibli.
Yeah,
And it's a really good one. And I think they have like this, the whole story is you've got like a tribe that's living peacefully somewhere. And then there is a whole area as well, which is called like the Sea of Corruption, which is like a big toxic waste, but it's like a weird kind of nature just started on it, and so it's
yeah,
like poisonous for human and other being. But it's got this own like ecosystem, I guess.
yeah.
We thought that was really cool, and then there is this idea of like all technologies from a war that started the whole thing. So we just kind of went with that. So the concept is yes, it was our more environmental activist uh, album.
Sure.
But we also just, half of the time we also are trying to write stories that are kind of inspiring, so we can kind of go on about like singing some, if it's beautiful, we're going to sing about something that's kind of, nice to sing about. And then
Right.
if it's a bit more grim, you kind of are able to put a bit of power and like ugly screams on it, or these kind of things. So I guess there is this element of like having a story that has up and downs, because you talk about it. What we do in bands of our style do is there's a lot of release and like building up and release and stuff like that, and it keeps on doing this, so the story needs to allow us to do this. And if you listen to the music and there's a concept, you've got to go in there and being like, all right, okay, cool, I kind of see what the music is telling me already.
Yep.
We try to follow that as well as we're writing. We're like, this part definitely feels like this, and this part feels definitely like that.
Right.
Like the spacey song of this album is the opener, Crimson Path.
Yep.
And so like we're gonna definitely, this is this guy arriving from space, and then you got this kind of trippy stuff.
Yeah.
Second one, like Viridian Bloom, it's about this beautiful at first like nature kind of like walk through like an amazing landscape, and then you get stuff that are a little bit like more violent, but still part of nature. You talked about Thirst. Thirst is about them discovering this technology, and it's kind of like just relentless thing
Yeah.
when technology comes to life. So you got all this kind of aspect to it.
I love uh the lyrics at the end of Thirst. In our depths of arrogance, passage too far, too deep, gone. Rend the bond so recently joined from this usher Eden fall. You must love language. How many languages
Yes,
how many
that
languages do you
that's
speak?
yeah, that's done. So lyrics are on this album mostly done. I'll do bits and bobs on that, but he did most of the lyrics on this one. These are really good lyrics indeed. I really like them.
Um,
Um,
now I heard a story that I mean, you must, like I said, you must love language. You must be a language lover because I knew you do work on the lyrics. I had heard a story that you wrote lyrics in French originally, or at one point you were at this time translating them into English, and then forgot a couple of words here and there, and then for Edinburough, we're like, let's leave it in and let's add Babylonian and let's add all of this. Is that an accurate story?
Not quite. I think what you might have heard is on this album already. We start doing stuff like thinking about making up words. So Dan was making up words quite often, and I guess it started even on Progenitor and stuff like that. Sometimes to time I would say stuff. So
Yeah.
sometimes to time I'm looking for a word and I just say it, and I will probably just go, oh, that's probably how you say it in English. And then the guys are not sure about it. Then they check it out, and then we find the word that we maybe want to use.
Okay. Okay.
So we done a bit of that by accident. But what will happen a lot on Etemen anyway is we actually we wanted to take words from their etymology points, so the history of the language, history of
Yeah.
the word, where is the word coming from, and then look at that and then making up words based on that. I think that's kind of cool thing to do because it's kind of how languages are built, you know. It's just you see them, you see the language travel and you see the language arrive in the UK. Usually it came from France, and before it came from Latin, or it came from Greece,
Right.
or it came from Sanskrit, or it came from, like different eras, and you can kind of get the whole story. I think when you're making albums where sometimes the concept of the album is about the story of civilization, I think it's kind of cool that you kind of take some references linguistically from
Hmm.
stuff that are also maybe from things that have inspired you. I mean, the last album has a track called Sarmate. Sarmate is a tribe. It's about a nomadic tribe, this song. And we took Sarmate is actually a tribe from Eastern Europe, Turkey,
Hmm.
that used to be a nomadic tribe on horse and, all that kind of story. So we were just like, we quite like going into a bit like, make some words that are cool, maybe less unusual. That's also sounds good on the ear. So you
Yeah.
can, when you're singing or just using it, they're quite memorable. But also has actually a meaning. If people are searching for it, you'll end up finding stuff,
Actually exactly what's been happening lately because I was like, hoping to interview you and sort of digging through and going, it's really interesting to see the use of, I was just tracking the use of names in Voidkind, Aeneas and Eleonora. And I was looking up the history of Aeneas and realized that's a Roman figure that is like kind of the one of their heroes the way that the Greeks had heroes. And I wondered what there seems to be a story about, and correct me if I'm wrong, in Voidkind it seems very much, I'd heard you talk about how it's about fanaticism, and there seems to be something about like Aeneas before you, I think is the line, and there's something about you're like this hero, trying to find this woman beyond the veil, or possibly another person beyond the veil, out in the sort of the end stage of perfection.
Yeah, I guess if I was kind of going through the story, Eleonora would be the beginning of the album if we were doing things chronologically, but we
Mm.
didn't. We wanted to like, I don't know why.
Ah,
We just have like all these stories, and from all these stories, you kind of make up a picture.
that's so interesting.
Yeah, Eleonora would be the starting point, and it's about this guy who's getting reached. Like there's this kind of messenger that reached to
Yeah.
him in his dreams, and it's meant to be like a collective dream. Like lots of people will have these dreams, and is this being Eleonora. who is like very seductive, but also she's kind of a spider. I don't know if you picked that up in the lyrics.
The eight arms,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
eight emerald arms. Yes, at the end of
a
at
weird
Cobalt
like
Sun
yeah.
Necropolis, which is I want to talk to you about because I love it because it's terrifying.
Yeah, it's also a joke. This is actually coming from a joke we had. So we had no titles at all when we were writing stuff, and all the songs had like really stupid titles. And I have no idea why, but this song used to be called "Sexy Spider." No idea why. And then Dan just was helping with like he started talking about Eleonora, and then he started putting the eight folded arms in it, and I was like, yes, cool. This is so it has like this little wink to us fucking around and not taking it too seriously.
I love it.
But
You got to start a concert like, okay, this is Sexy Spider,
yes,
and then just go into it. See what
uh,
the audience does.
it's tricky, man. From time to time, we've got like this for a while before going on tour. We still think about the songs with the old titles, and then you put the set list together, and you're like, oh, what's the name of this song, etc. So they all have like crazy titles. One good title is for Reaching for Talos. It used to be called. We used to use a Scottish word, and the name of the song was Ken What. Ken What means know what. Ken is no in
Oh
Scottish.
yeah, yeah.
When they say Ken what, it means you know what. And we just call it Ken what for ages. So there's just a lot of funny stuff like this.
I love that. I love that. I love um the like you said, there's things that you can find if you look for it. Like I never occurred to me the weighing of the heart. I mean, I know the story of that, and then I realized that in the language that the vocalist that you had, the female vocalist in Edinburough sings a line about Limina Anubi, and I was like, oh, there's Anubis who's the god that weighs the heart. And I'd never connected that before. I think I realized really digging into the lyrics. Like I had pretty well dug into Edinburough, but then looking at Voidkind, I'm starting to go, oh wow, this is a lot more self-referential and where you're putting like where you're setting things up and where they kind of come back in the album is really interesting in terms of it sounds like what you were saying, like you've written these songs, you go, well, if it's happening chronologically, this is going to be the first song, but it's not, but it's not because is that a musical choice? Oh, we want this
Oh,
song first.
I think it was more like we've done chronological stuff a lot, where it was more like just a movie, like a storytelling, like kind of like like stereotypical kind of storyline thing. But we didn't want to do that because we felt like I was talking about history 2 seconds before, and I feel like in history you never get a story from the beginning to the end. Like those historians or archaeologists or whatever, they would just end up picking some stuff up, and they have to make
Right,
the whole picture together.
right.
So I guess it was on one side because we wanted to do something different. And then we wanted to, if people were picking things up, we wanted to be quite enigmatic as well. We didn't want to just reveal everything, which I think is cool. I
I do
prefer
too.
stuff like that. There was also an element, I think the guys, we've played a lot of From Software video games,
Right.
so like stuff
Dark
like
Souls.
yeah, I said the Dark Souls and like the Bloodborns, and you play these games and you have like for a while no idea of what's happening unless you start reading like the stories of the items you're picking up, and so we're a bit nerdy, geeky, let's put it this way, but we love that stuff. And so we just wanted our concept to feel the same. And if people want to be really geeky and nerdy about it, just bash on. There's plenty of stuff to
Dude,
uncover.
I'm a Shakespeare nerd, so I love like deconstructing language and looking at language and where there are references to other things. So yes, I had to save you from the 5 pages of nerd notes that I wrote going, but Anubis is connected to this idea in history and this idea in history. And I was like, dude, you're not going to bore Victor with your dumb fucking nerd shit, okay?
You
I-
wouldn't. You wouldn't.
Victor would out nerd me any day. Um, you know what? Edmund Anka, I just had this thought driving down here, and so now I'm regretting it. I'm going to say it anyway. Feels like the thrilling Edmund Anka is my absolute my favorite album. I said it on the podcast and I mean it. I really do think it is one of the best metal albums of the 21st century. I think like it's got to be uh, in my top three. Like it's just absolutely incredible. I think it's a masterpiece, and I love it. And thank you for it. And it feels like it has sort of a sociological feel to it, building the towers, this race of people that are leaving, and there's definitely like a class structure thing, brick by stone by bold libation. There's something very blue collar about that. People, slaves building ziggurats for this. There's this hierarchy, and then you get to Voidkind, and it's sudden and I've seen it described so much as sci-fi, and I'm now looking at the lyrics and seeing the cover art, which is incredible. It feels like cosmic horror to me. Is that, do you think that's right?
Yes, definitely. That was the approach. I think everything the album identity is a lot darker, and what is happening in it
Much.
is also a lot more. I mean, they are both terrible stories, but the first one is exactly what you're saying. Is very much a society
Yep.
class war, I guess you could call
Yeah,
that.
yeah, class war, right?
And then the Voidkind is a lot more about religion, fanaticism, and how this can, just an extreme sci-fi gory version of it. And I mean, yeah, there's plenty of that. Like I'm watching Handmaid's Tale right now.
Oh,
It's that kind of vibe where you've got like these absolute psychos that. But there is a part of truth in what they are saying in our story because there is actual,
sure.
like monsters and interdimensional beings and stuff like that. So there's an element of they are crazy, but they are getting like kind of seduced by this being in another dimension, and
Right.
until they get to this other dimension, they don't really. They're just basically, cleaning the table with all the different other
Other
religions
religions.
and not only other religions, just other. There is, I mean, Summa Blasphemia, the first song
Yeah,
of the album,
I love that
is
song.
um, about them destroying a city, like a great city of knowledge, and it's like it's like Alexandria.
Library of Alexandria.
It's exactly this kind of vibe where it's just like the destruction of knowledge and the destruction of the past to bring your own city on there and reaching for Telos. Reaching for Telos is actually they are in a city that they built above the whole city, and this is kind of the same place where the destruction started, and this is them kind of having a bit of a glory moment until they are going to the other world. So
Yeah,
this is what the song is about. So
yeah,
yeah,
that's
there's this vibe of again, it's half about history, half about fantasy, and half about making stories that are kind of interesting and compelling.
well, I mean, metaphorical, right? I mean, you in a way. I mean, how can you not be a human in the world and not be commenting on things? I think, a huge class divide and this sort of class war that's pertinent in so many places. Certainly, fanatics who are blindly following, wandering faithfully toward their God, not knowing what their God has prepared for them, is really pertinent for me in the United States right now. In a political sense, it can be a pretty scary place to be. It's a pretty scary place to be right now. I'll tell you the truth. And there's something about that walking forward blindly that is it resonates. I think the creepiest line for me is "Bless these pale hands." Just the repetition of it. There's something about that is that um, do you know um, do you know the King in Yellow, the Pallid Mask, Robert
No.
W. Chambers? You ever see True Detective?
Yes.
Okay. That the Yellow King, that whole thing, it comes from Robert Chambers' book, The King in Yellow, and it's about this. It's a series of short stories, and it's about this play that makes people go mad. But he references this far-off world of Carcosa and the twin suns, where the shadows of men's thoughts grow long, and you don't know exactly what's happening. It's similar. It has a similar vibe to it, but something about "Bless these pale hands" doesn't tell me. It doesn't tell me anything, and it tells me everything about exactly how terrifying this world is, this other side. My other favorite lyric in that Cobalt Sun Necropolis is exponential membrane, tapestry of flesh. I
Yeah.
It's to like this cosmic body horror of people being eyes stitched together that are forever hungry across the void. My God,
That's
man.
totally amazing. That's a good part. I think it's just even singing about it. I remember doing vocals for that part, and I was just like, this part is totally minging, but in a good way. And it's just crazy. Like it's got this just vibe of crazy. Man, this is my favorite song. This one, I think it's
It's so
so
good.
fun. Yeah, it's really fun. Like it's just got this. What I like about it is it starts. It shouldn't walk. It starts with this kind of nice. Well, actually, start with like this big feedback kind of
Yep,
neurosis stuff. Moves
yep,
on to like an opeth three parts harmonies, and then he switched to another kind of dirty, again neurosis kind of vibe with like weird
yeah,
synth in the background, and then he just takes off with like this full on neurosis to open up with like this kind of slamming riff at the end.
yeah,
Man, when he came together that song, I was just like, yep, that's a perfect closer.
dude. And the way you guys ended it, where it sounds like the song is being consumed.
Yeah, yeah.
I
It's
remember hearing it the
not
first time and I was like,
consumed.
I think I'm disassociating from this. And I had to listen to it again and I was like, I just gotta stop because this is kind of scaring me. It's so good, man. I keep coming back to it because I'm a horror nerd. I love it. I love it.
It's the idea for that was we were thinking about, do you know those when Asian hornets goes into bees hives, they
Yes.
the bees are going around them and they're just cooking them. It just like vibrates and they just cooking them and then resume their life and the thing just falls cooking. That's what we took some we had this idea of this bubble, like them just joining together and becoming like a shape of some kind of fluid, some kind of sphere of fluid. And the idea was we wanted to kind of get these noises, the buzzing of insects that were just like building up, building up, building up, and then
Yeah.
everything was quiet because there's
And then
nothing in the universe anymore. That's kind of the idea.
it sounds like empty space. It sounds like all of a sudden there's
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah,
and
I say it's just
it's
like something I would mental. It's not even explosion. It's more like yeah, a black hole kind of vibe.
black
Yeah.
hole singularity, right? And it sounds
Yeah.
exactly like that. It sounds like, and the thing that I think it's is interesting that it has that image of yeah, of what a million eyes uh, that are hungering, looking down and hungering, and there's this sense of it's such a great image of like a perpetual torment of like you are now your individuality is gone. You keep referring to them as a hive toward in the last couple songs, right? And I'm sure it's probably elsewhere, but you keep talking about an individual becoming part of a hive. And then there's this tapestry of flesh stretched across the sky and everything. There's something about that being losing your individuality to be like a meat blanket in space, which is just so horrifying. It's so horrifying. And I was thrilled. I was like, this is dark shit. Are you okay, Victor?
Yeah, we were good. And it's Dan and I were on this one. But man, I've got to say, maybe it's a bit morbid, but I do also like this kind of stuff, like
I
this
do
kind of
too.
story. It's very Lovecraft, It's got
Yeah.
very, very much that kind of vibe. And again, I mentioned the video games we've been playing, so it's got this kind of cosmic horror vibe to it. But also, I just feel like it fits perfectly with this idea of hive mind. It fits perfectly with like fanaticism to me
Yep.
because you were talking about loss of identity, just not thinking properly anymore. You kind of don't have any critical thinking, and just being able to do stuff that are absolutely banana,
Yeah.
just because you lost yourself into something else. I think this is it's not a message. It's just I don't feel like sometimes people start getting us into political chat. I just feel like it's not even a political chat for us. It's just basic human history, and if you can read it in whatever way you want. But yeah, at the end of the
No,
day,
no, you're absolutely right. We have to be careful. Be like, well, we're not talking. I do this again. I said this in an interview the other day. Don't worry about it. I'm the one who then gets to go. These these moronic QAnon people in this in the country that are like it haven't no matter what evidence you're putting in front of them, no matter what objective reality is surrounding them, it doesn't matter. They're walking toward the flesh blanket in space and they
yeah,
don't
yeah,
care.
eventually there'll be a blanket of flesh, exactly.
That's the title of your next album, dude. Um, you know what? Like, another thing I was thinking about that I wanted to ask you about is that no matter how heavy you guys get, and you guys get very heavy, this feels like a very dense record. Record feels very like it's intense and from the beginning. I mean, Summa Blasphemia is just like right off the bat, little intro, but then like you guys are hitting hard. But no matter how heavy it gets, it feels like there is melody either right around the corner or layered on top or about to come out of the heaviness. And I love that. It's never just open E, you know. There really is so much there's so much dynamic to it. And it's not just simple, we're going to play something heavy, now we're going to play an acoustic section, we're going to play something heavy. Like you guys have you've layered it and stitched it together in a way that is that something you're conscious of, that you're consciously going, we don't want to just do a heavy thing, we don't want to just do an acoustic thing.
Yeah, for sure. Although I think the acoustic stuff never really materialized, just because
Yeah, I
we
don't
haven't written one. I think it could
I don't mean
happen. It could happen, like, as long, I think, I don't we start not thinking about songs as songs sometime to time. Sometimes it just becomes album stuff.
yeah,
We have songs that used to be something, but then we added an intro because it needed an intro, and then it's actually an acoustic intro. So Sarmate is there's this little
yep,
12 string stuff I'm doing on it, and then the song starts. But it's no, for us it's the same song. Pass, it's, I think, Pass of Dust is the name of this intro. But the yeah, talking about our main songs, like the meat and potatoes, like the main thing in the music. For sure, I think it's more a question of, for us, we just want things to be as again, dynamic and as interesting. You should just, sometimes some bands, they get away with it, but they get locked into one kind of groove, and I get bored. Like, I think stoner does that a lot, and I like stoner. There's lots of stoner and doom metal that I'm,
yep.
I'm really into. But the doom and stoner I'm more into other stuff that are a bit more dynamic. I think Yob is a great example
I
of
love
that.
Yob. I love them.
Great band. Great band. You're in Seattle, aren't you?
I'm in Seattle. I actually went to University of Oregon, which is in Eugene, which is where Yob's
Yeah,
from.
yeah. That's
Yeah,
that's where it's from. It's a great band, man. I've
I
loved
love
them
them.
for a while now. Sub
But you're
Rosa.
right. I mean, I think Doom sometimes. I mean, when Doom doesn't work, it doesn't work because it's gets into a trope.
Yeah, yeah,
It's kind of lacks dynamism,
yeah.
like
I,
you're
th- I,
saying.
th- I think so. I think it's just the way we like music in general, and we listen to so much different stuff. Like, on the more like out there stuff, we listen to, like, prog jazz stuff, things that are a bit like, a bit stranger, with really strange time signatures and
Yeah,
and crazy crazy musicians. But then sometimes we listen to hardcore, and then sometimes we listen to doom, and
yeah.
we just like picking things up from all these styles that we like, and having riffs that are like parts and beats and grooves that just works in that, and then we just make songs together. So we just end up jamming, and it just happens
That's
relatively naturally. Um,
that's great. That's actually a great segue. So I did a series on this show. I did sort of, I always say it's the history, philosophy, and future of the greatest music in the world, heavy metal. And we did history, and I always talk about philosophy. But then I did a series on like, what do I think is the future of, heavy metal? There were four bands, and you guys were one of them. And the reason I think among all of these bands, as I see, is like this is where we're going, is synthesis. You're able to take all of these different elements and synthesize them into your own unique way of expressing music. And there's a little bit of prog, a little bit of sludge, a little bit of post, a little bit of all of that, a little bit of doom, all of that running through. And I think the band, um, it, that's one of my favorite things about it is watching. You know, I don't get to see it behind the scenes, watch, the sausage being made, but, dropping idea pebbles and things in the pond and then watching the ripples come out in the form of Voidkind or Edinburough. And I just think it's always uniquely Dune.
Thank you. I agree with you. It's one future, I think, what you are saying. And there is definitely a lot of bands like that. My favorite bands are that, and my favorite releases, this band have been mostly that. I think the new Blood Incantation album is awesome for that as
It
well. The fact
I
that
love
it's a great album. I really really like it. I think everyone is raving about it. I think it's justified. I think it's really really well done, and I think there's tons of ideas in it, and I like the fact that they just went. You can clearly, and they are totally wearing their influences on their sleeve. We're a bit like that too. I think we're very much like that. And I just think it's really cool what they did. They just moment you've got full on Pink Floyd vibes, and some other moments you've got stuff
Absolutely.
that are like classic, just classic death metal, but like the kind of death metal I like as well. So it's really cool to see that. And there is a lot of other bands who are doing stuff in their own style like that, and I like that particularly. But at the same time, I also think while this is happening, you also have like the stuff that are maybe not commercially successful, but things that like the maybe mainstream people and the mainstream industry seems to be backing up a bit more, which is not really my cup of tea. A little less, like especially like the whole revival of old school 2000 hardcore kind of like metalcore stuff. I,
Hmm.
s- I find like there's so much music coming out of computers right now with like like
Yeah.
this kind of really the sound of the guitar that is very genty, and
Yeah.
I'm not into it. I'm really not into it. It's not my style, and I've really struggled. I try to listen to everything, but I struggle with that, and I think this is really popular right now. I just cannot get my head around why.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
it. Yeah, I get that. There's stuff that I'm just baffled by you know.
but man, each to their own as well. Some people will hate what we're doing. They might think it's mental what we're doing. So it's just a personal taste here. Again, I'm not judging, but at
Yeah,
the same
no,
time,
and I think
you never
I'm.
have to where things are going. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I think so, and I think, I mean, I certainly am not. It wasn't saying like this will all look like Dune in the future, but I mean like
Why not?
the example of what you're going to be a flesh tapestry.
Exactly.
That what you do is, I think, something a way that metal can continue to grow because I want to be an advocate for it. I want to see the best metal. Did you hear the new Uncle Acid?
No, I have not listened to them in ages, so I will. Is it good?
It's okay. Talk about Doom stepping out of its comfort zone. It's a full-on soundtrack where they're like, it's a score for a film, but they include scenes from the film. They've hired two Italian actors to like do dialogue. It's all in Italian. I didn't know what they were saying until I got the vinyl. And they'll do like they're do. I mean, it's like audio theater. It's amazing. It's all noir, and there's still the old Uncle Acid stuff, killer riffs, stuff like that. But then they're also doing stuff like you can hear all of a sudden they're doing a Nina Simone echo, and it sounds like the opening of Stranger Things. There's this 80s like it's like, what am I listening to? It is gonzo, man. It's out there. It's one of my other
Oh, I'm going
favorites
to
of
listen
the
to that.
year. Yeah, it's really good. Um, anyway, hey, I don't want to keep you any longer. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. Dune is my favorite band making music right now, and so it's an honor to be able to talk to you. I really, I'm kind of pinching myself.
Don't be silly. It was a pleasure to talk about our stuff. Yeah, and anytime, maybe for next album or something.
That sounds great, man. Thanks. Anytime. Happy to promote. Happy to talk to you. Thanks, brother.
Cheers. Bye bye.